Let's say you're on your diànhuà phone watching the 新闻 news where a 记者 reporter is discussing how the 警察 police have started putting 广告 advertisements in the local 杂志 magazines. Whole lot of Chinese there, right? Except that wasn't really Chinese. That's right, you heard me. That was actually Japanese. Welcome to one of history's most unexpected Uno reversals, where a student became the teacher, and an entire language got flipped on its head. This is the story of World War I. A long time ago, in a land far, far away, so over 1,000 years ago, Japan was China's diligent apprentice. The very cornerstones of Japanese civilization were originally Chinese, particularly from the Tang Dynasty. Centralized government, Chinese. Legal system, Chinese. Kanji characters, Chinese. Japanese scholars would spend decades poring over Chinese classics, and the characters they studied would become the backbone of the Japanese language. Kanji. Kanji is the Japanese pronunciation of Hanzi, as in Han Chinese characters. And so, as the teapot of Chinese characters poured into the Japanese teacup, some transformed to mean different things. But those that kept their Chinese origins became what we now call Sino-Japanese vocabulary, or Kango. Kango is the Japanese pronunciation of Hanyu, Han, as in Han Chinese, and Yu, language. Even today, almost 60% of the words in Japanese dictionaries are actually still Kango. But Japan wouldn't be the borrower forever, because geopolitics works in complicated ways. At the end of the Qing dynasty, China was battered by industrialized and modernized Western powers, particularly in the Opium Wars. That's fair enough. The Western powers had the technology and manufacturing. But what nobody saw coming was how in 1894, little old Japan, China's historical apprentice, and not some distant colonial empire, played the Uno reverse card and beat the crap out of Big Brother China in the First Sino-Japanese War. The Chinese were absolutely stunned. Hold on. When and how did Japan get so overpowered? And that's when the cultural tables turned completely. Chinese intellectuals began flocking to Japan to learn from them. Asia's millennial-long, undisputed superpower now found itself getting schooled by its former student. The Qing dynasty first sent 13 students to Japan in 1896. Within a decade, that number exploded to over 10,000. And these weren't just any students, these were China's best and brightest, all desperate to figure out how Japan advanced so quickly while China was still stuck in the past. And where it gets really interesting is not the tech, but the language. Since the Japanese had been consistently modernizing and westernizing in the decades since the 1868 Meiji Restoration, they had already translated complex Western concepts into kanji. They created new character combinations to express these foreign ideas that China had no words for, words subsequently called hezhi hanyu, or wasei kango, Japanese-made Chinese language. And the thing is, Japan's translations were a lot more elegant than China's. Take the term economics. The Chinese scholar Yan Fu had invented jixué, literally calculation study. Okay, sort of, I guess, but that sounds like math. The Japanese used jingjixué, management study. Maybe not perfect, but definitely more comprehensive. For sociology, Yan Fu created quanxue, group study. Is that the study of groups or studying in a group? The Japanese, on the other hand, called it shèhuì, society study. Big improvement there. Now, to Yan's credit, those Chinese versions at least made sense. It didn't always. For telephone, the Chinese used de lü feng, or virtue law wind. Why? Because it's just telephone with Chinese sounds. 德律风, telephone. Silly, right? The Japanese, on the other hand, just called it diànhuà, electric speech. Wow, so much better. Now, what about submarines? Early Chinese texts had 色泊马林, literally loot sudden agate forest. More phonetic nonsense. The Japanese? 潜水艇, dive water boat, obviously. But how about romantic? China went with 罗曼蒂克. Come on. Japan. Now, they also copied the sound with roman, but those characters were 浪漫 in Chinese, which mean wave unrestrained, as in a wave of unrestrained emotion. Not only did they capture the sound, they captured the soul. Impressive. And that's not even the worst of China's transliterations. The Chinese version of democracy? 德摩克拉西. Like, what the heck is that? The Japanese version? 民主, literally citizen masters. No freaking contest. The Japanese weren't just translating either. They were innovating. They created the concept of 哲学 for philosophy, combining wisdom and study. They gave us 社会主义 for socialism, combining society and doctrine. They also took the characters 画 to transform and 性 disposition and repurposed them into suffixes to express modern philosophies. The 画 suffix meant something like something-ization, and created terms like 现代化, modernization, and 民主化, democracyization. The 性 suffix meant something like ness, and allowed terms like 可能性, possible-ness, or possibility, and 重要性, importantness, or importance. These were more than just borrowed words. They were revolutionary tools that now allowed China to easily engage with these new concepts and ideas, and Chinese reformers embraced Japan's linguistic innovations with open arms. Yay! But not for everyone. Many critics, from top scholars to newspaper editors, accused them of polluting the nation with their absurd and nonsensical, ridiculous imitation of Japanese. The government was divided too. The high official, Zhang Zhidong, was known for getting really freaking mad whenever he saw a Japanese term and wanted to ban all of them. One time, an advisor handed him a document with the word jiànkāng, or health, on it. Yeah, that's Japanese too. Anyway, he threw it back at the guy saying, 健康乃日本名词 用之殊觉可恨. Health is a Japanese term, and using it is utterly hateful. Clearly, the guy needed a major chill pill. But guess what the advisor said back to him? 名词一日本, 名词用之犹觉可恨. Term is also a Japanese term, and using it is even more hateful. Get wrecked! 名词, or term, was also Japanese. Zhang was using a Japanese term to ban Japanese terms. Good job, dude. In the end, he switched from using 日本名词, Japanese term, to 日本土话, Japanese vernacular. Talk about a silly tantrum. Meanwhile, others tried to offer new, pure-blooded Chinese alternatives instead of just shutting down everything Japanese. Remember diànhuà, the calculation study and group study guy? Those were his weapons of the war. He came up with almost 500 alternatives, but only a handful survive today. For example, in the case of the term logic, Japan dug up the old Chinese word for reasoning, 论理, while China ended up using Yan's 逻辑, a technical transliteration that stuck around partly because it sounded cool and partly because, well, it wasn't Japanese. For natural selection, Japan went with 自然淘汰, nature elimination, and China went with the literal 自然选择, nature selection. But Yan's more epic 物竞天择, or creatures compete, heaven selects, was so good that it remains an iconic idiom today. For utopia, Japan simply used 理想国, or ideal country, while Yan used a literary play on words to create 乌托邦, non-existent, reliant nation, as in a nation built on nothing. Dang! At least in this case, China still won at poetic punch, and it actually mirrors the word's original Greek meaning, and it actually kind of sounds like utopia. Side note, in the end, Japan gave up too, and now they just call it utopia. But that's really about it. Nowadays, words like 国际, international, 哲学, philosophy, and even 科学, science, sound so obvious and natural that I bet you didn't even know they were borrowed. The fact of the matter is, in a lot of cases, Japan simply did it better. Their translations made more sense and, quite frankly, didn't sound ridiculous. They distilled Western ideas into their core concepts and then found characters that captured the soul of what those concepts actually meant. Japan's ability to modernize was just as much thanks to their technical advancement as it was to their philosophical adaptability. And so ended what I would call Word War I. But just like the actual World War I, it only resulted in a temporary peace. This battle might have ended amicably, but the next one would split China in two and spark flame wars that burn to this very day. In this whole video, we watched words cross the sea between China and Japan. But once, a person made that exact crossing. A Japanese boy sailed to China at 19, climbed all the way to the top of the emperor's court, and became close friends with one of the most famous poets who ever lived. And then, his ship home vanished at sea, and that poet sat down and wrote his funeral poem while he was still alive. What actually happened to him is the story on your screen right now. Click it to watch, and until next time, 再见!